Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in for MelMel's book chat. I always have to laugh because my husband told me not to call it that, but I think it's fun. And as you know, I am involved in a huge writing community, mostly educators who are also authors. And today I have a wonderful treat, a wonderful woman who is loved by many of the same people that I love. Her name is Tara Linney. So let's welcome Tara Linney today. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Melody.
Okay, so I'm coming in from Alaska. Where are you streaming in from?
I'm in California.
Awesome. So we are just an hour apart. So cool. So cool. And so the reason I asked you to come on today is because you have a really cool book. It's my brain is going, but it's Code Equity. So the first question, oh, you know what? Tell us a little bit, but before, I'm so excited that you're on today. My brain is jumping to the future. But tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, let's see. Well, on the personal end, I love going blueberry picking like every weekend when the blueberries are in season. So I've been doing that on my weekends. On the professional side, I've been in education for a decade, a solid decade now. Before that, I was working in public relations and marketing for the American Cancer Society and different marketing companies. And then for about 4 years, I taught abroad. So I was an ed tech coach and coordinator over at Singapore American School and then at the American School of Paris. And only in the last, I guess I've been here a year now. No, less than a year. I've been back in the US. So, yeah.
That is so incredible. Oh my goodness. And now we were just talking about how we met last year at ISTE, and I had completely forgotten. But now that you say all of that, I remember the conversation that we were having. And so, do you want to tell the funny story or should we? Yeah. But I do remember because you were just about to go on your way, but you were going to make sure that I wasn't going to accost a special friend of ours.
Yes.
So that, but I
We're
remember you.
sisters. Yeah.
What?
We're
Yes.
basically sisters, so you know.
But I love that because now that takes me back and I remember it. Yes, that is so cool. What a great experience. And so how are things different, like, in Paris or in Europe as opposed to the United States? Like,
So, yeah, that's a great question. So, well, you asked about Paris. I'll start with Singapore, though. In Singapore,
okay.
it was a major culture shock. Not in a bad way, just in a very like Pleasantville way where like everything is a combination of Pleasantville and Groundhog Day. Like if you're into movies at all. So it's like
Yes.
it's 1 degree north of the equator. So the weather was very consistent. There was wet monsoon season, dry monsoon season, but both brought rain. And then, but everything was super safe. Like there were no crimes. I mean, there were crimes, but not really a lot. Everything was illegal, like everything, including chewing gum. There were no protests. So when the whole Trump thing happened a couple of years ago, he had to decide between Hong Kong and Singapore. In Hong Kong, you can protest. In Singapore, you cannot. It is illegal. So he had it there. So it's a very safe place. I really have nothing bad to say about it. The only thing, though, is that after spending 3 years in Singapore and then moving to France, it was like culture shock all over again because France is the polar opposite on every level. Like there's protests all the time. Not to say that things are dangerous, but they're definitely louder.
Well, there's definitely crime, yeah, there too. So, wow, that's so interesting. That's I'm gonna have to pick your brain a little bit more about that later. But I want to say that Sarah says yes. Regina says, "Hey, Tara," and Sarah says, "Yes, we are sister, sister." That's so cool. And Rachel Pearson says, "Hey, everyone." So thank you guys so much for joining in and just on a great conversation today. So you have like international experience. You've got national experience. I'm just curious, what made you decide to write about code equity? And tell us a little bit about your work of art. And don't forget to show us your book.
Of course. So this is my baby. This is my book, Code Equity, and it's all about keen girls into coding. So it started off as a passion project of, I had worked in I worked in an all-girls public charter school in DC. I had worked in public schools in both rural and urban areas in the US before I went abroad. And one thing that I noticed was that there is this inequity. So like whenever I did coding with students, the teachers would always give me the high-flying boys instead of the girls, right? And they're like, oh no, the girls are too quiet. They don't know. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Like I worked at an all girls school. I know a little bit more than what I'm being told. And then, so I did a little social experiment when I started working in Singapore, and I started this after school coding club, and I called it Programming Pioneers, which I should know that that was just a bad name. But I opened it up to boys and girls. It was elementary. I'm like, all right, let's see who's going to sign up. 24 boys and 1 girl.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, social experiment. Let's see how this goes. The girl knew her stuff. She knew it. But the problem was, no matter what she knew, the boys would always say, no, you don't know how to do that. But she was actually right. So it made me think, like, what are we doing in education that is allowing this type of inequitable, kind of discriminatory around gender behavior to exist? And I took a deeper look and a lot of reflection on different schools that I had worked in, different things that I see at conferences around the world, and then the teachers that I was working with in that setting. And I noticed something, like it stems from, there's a couple of different places where this inequity stems from, but one of the key factors is when a child is in school, and this is before remote learning, of course, but when a child is in school and they have that same teacher, is that same teacher always calling on the same students? When it comes to the challenging subjects of math and science, is the teacher saying, male or female or other, is the teacher saying, I'm not a math person, I'm not a science person? When something is broken in the classroom, is it always IT that's being called in before troubleshooting is happening? And so it really made me think and dig into what causes this. And so I did a lot of research just on the history of coding and computer science and where women have been, and then what happened that had changed that. And so all of that research led me to writing this book.
Wow. I love that. And I will say, like, it's totally right on. So my kids are really into coding, but I have more girls than I have boys. And it was really hard for me to empower them in that area because I felt so clueless myself. And the attitudes that you talked about were definitely present when I was growing up. And so, in a lot of ways, being an educator, I have discovered a lot of my mindsets that were very toxic. And I wonder how long that I was pushing that out there without even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just said, I probably was one of those that called IT immediately or expressed that I'm not, and I still say this. So yeah, I'm not a techie person, but really it's just something that we can all grow into. Thank God my daughters are they're just so into it that they don't care about what I say. And I'm just curious, like, is there an application or anything that you suggest for young people, especially girls, to use to get into coding?
So there's not one in particular. It really depends on the girl and what they like, what their interests are, right? So a lot of things with coding, and I think a lot of the turnoff with between girls and boys is that when we create these different coding programs, it's all about, hey, let's build robots that are going to fight each other. And while that's fun, who does that cater to? Like, is the only purpose for them to do like MMA fighting or WWE or like whatever, but like in robot form?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you like look at the girls in your community, what are they into? Are they into fighting, or are they into helping? Are they into creating, or are they into breaking down things and destroying things, right? So making sure that whatever you're bringing into a coding environment meets the people's needs and interests within that environment. Because if you're just saying, hey, build a game, that blows up this, that, and the other, who's into that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
knowing your audience for sure.
Yeah.
Um, is there like something that a girl has coded that stays in your mind that just has blown you away that you always think about? I'm sorry I didn't ask you this when we were first preparing. I'm so sorry. And you can
Um,
think about it. Think about it for a second. And anybody who's watching, if you have any coding stories that you want to share, please comment and I'll share it out. But just and Tara, I apologize because I did not like. It's just that the more you talk, the more my mind is going. So, and somebody is saying, okay, here Rachel is saying, there's an assumption that all girls will want to do something with fashion too. No problem if they do, but that's not all girls are into. Totally agree. Totally
exactly.
agree. Thank you for sharing, Rachel.
So, all right. Well, I won't share last names, but when I worked at the American School of Paris, I had this little coder. Her name was Ruby. And Ruby was great. There's Hello Ruby is this really great book. And because they were elementary age girls, I made it so that we would read like a chapter, which was just a few pages of the book every time that we met. And they were really into it. And then everybody would point and be like, Ruby, look, you're in the story. It was super cute. Anyhow, Ruby is this coder who is like beyond what the other girls were, is even beyond what the other boys in her third grade class were doing. So one day, I had them create a project around, we're going to use Scratch and you're going to create something that is a reflection of something that happened this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so she made this really cool, kind of like a digital story, essentially, with the transitions and everything using Scratch. And like it brought a tear to my eye because I was like, oh my gosh. And she told her story of how the boys weren't letting her play soccer during recess because she was a girl. And I'm like, there's so many things where this gender inequity exists, in sports and computer science and tech, when we go to conferences and see nothing but white men on a panel talking about equity. Like, what? And that really got to me when she shared that, because I was like, this is still a problem. This is still an issue. But what I really like is that she used the coding as a platform to create this digital story. Now, maybe the next iteration is an app where girls who are going through similar things, they can put in, here's my problem, and then say, hey, here's what I did. Or have this community where they don't feel alone and isolated, because we all know as women, as girls, as females, that there is discrimination, But the thing is to not allow that to be okay and to not allow that to be the norm.
Right. I'm going to be sharing some different comments. Thank you, Sarah, and Rachel. And I want to say, for those people who say, okay, so are you trying to vilify boys now because you're creating something that's geared towards girls? What would you like to say to them? Or I know that your message is strong and I know that there's discrimination, but there's a lot of people that think that just because you place another, like whether it's race or gender or sexuality, religion or anything, if you place something above what is status quo, you must be vilifying, the status quo. So how would you like to address that? And I'll give you a second if you want me to, because there's some other comments.
I'm debating saying this or not. Hold on. Yeah, I can say it. Okay, so think of it like what's currently going on in society, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's currently going on in society, and like what I really enjoyed seeing on Twitter the other week was K-pop fans taking over when this hashtag came out that said White Lives Matter, right? So there's the Black Lives Matter movement, which has now increased way more than it has before. And as somebody who's biracial, I'm like in full support, right? But then you have this other side that's like, all lives matter. But then, like, when you get down to it, if Black lives don't matter, then do all lives actually matter? Like, we have to get to one place before we get to another. And another analogy that I really like that's been used is like, imagine that there's a house in the neighborhood that's on fire. You call for like 911. The fire truck comes, they put out that fire. Are you also saying, here, come over here, come help me? No. So we have this crisis in education and within technology where girls are oftentimes, almost all the time, paid less than boys, where girls are thought of after boys, if they're even thought of at all. So the issue is not, hey, I'm a boy, what about me? No, that's not it right now. Maybe it will be again one day, if it ever was to begin with, but but it's not it right now. Like, wait your turn.
Right. I really love that analogy. And you know, it's I don't want to get super like, controversial, which is sad that this has to be controversial, but you know that it is, because that's how it has played out in the world around us. But you're exactly right. And I think that the challenge that I'm even taking in my own mind is how have I had that bias towards boys in my own profession of education, even with my own children. And I don't want that to play out because like this is the time where we can all be empowered. We can all use the gifts that God has given us and just, do something wonderful in the world. And I think even right now with the pandemic going on and not sure how we're going to open up next year, like, and I was talking to the tech rabbi earlier today, like that creative piece is absolutely so important. It's going to keep our kids in. And if we want both boys and girls to stay involved, we have to give them both the opportunity to show what they can do without putting our bias on top of that. And that's
Right.
what you're getting. Such a great message. Did you want to add anything to that? Because I started taking over with my talk. Sorry.
No, I mean, just to say, like when it comes to education, regardless of if it's remote or analog, just, be mindful. Like, what are those subconsciouses that you either have a disposition about yourself or the students in your classroom? And are you ensuring that students have equitable opportunities to the same type of education? Because if they don't, then that's a problem. And, like the boys, when they see that, oh, well, girls were never into tech, girls were never into coding. When those boys go and become CEOs of different like Fortune 500 companies or whatever, they're not going to think to hire girls because they never saw a girl excel in that when they were in school.
That's such a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. I didn't even think of it to that level. So I need to get into your book. I mean, I think this actually needs to be a book study. And I would love to be a part of that because as you talk, I feel like a whole bunch of things that I had subconscious I didn't even think about. I have never thought about before,
Right.
and except for surface level. So I really appreciate this. And I'm like, yes, I'm definitely going to be getting your book soon. And I'm a parent. I'm actually not a public school educator right now, although I do plan on returning, but I am homeschooling my children. Who should read this book? Is it just for public school educators? Who did you write this for?
So I wrote this for educators, but if you think about it, an educator is anybody who educates a child. And so if you're educating either one child or a group of children, then you're an educator, like a different type of educator, yes, but you're still educating. And so that's who I wrote it for. Anybody who interacts with somebody that they are teaching to some level. So it could be homeschool teachers, it could be public school, private school, independent school. It really doesn't matter the type of school, but just so long as there's learning involved. Because I think, there's a lot in here about, the first chapter is all about the history. And then the second chapter is all about the strategies of how to change things and how to notice, here's my subconscious bias. Here's what I oftentimes do. How can I have boys and girls work together? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is so cool. I know. I just want, and I told Tara before we started, like I can finally get all these comments to pop up. So I hope that is so distracting. But yes, we need to get a book study going. Dr. Sarah Thomas agrees with me, so we know it's a legit idea. But yes, and I agree with you too that if you are in charge of a young person's education, if you're facilitating in any way, you're an educator. I think parents are absolutely the most important educators in a child's life. And I think if you're watching today and you're a parent and you are not going to go into the school system except to volunteer sometimes, I still think that this is probably something that you should to read. Even if you're just a boy, I don't want to say that. Even if you are a boy mom, I think that this can help us with our sons to make sure that we are still how do we help our sons to see women in a very respectful way so that when they are raised to leadership, like we hope that they will be, that they're also including the women in their life around them who are is just as important and have so much to offer too. Oh yes. Oh, here's another comment. Yes. Oh, so thank you, Rochelle. You got the book. Woohoo. So we already know that it's a really good book. And Tara, so how can we follow your work? What are you doing like in the near future that we can follow or learn from you more?
So things are a little quiet at the moment because I'm building some things in the background, which will be shared on all of the socials. So I have my website, which is just myname.com. It's not myname.com, but it's taralinney.com. I wonder if is myname.com a thing? It should be. And then I'm also on Twitter at my handle, which is my name. And then my travels are more so on Instagram, but that's starting to change a little. I've got a couple of conferences that I'm speaking at. There's a Microsoft, though it's called something different. Yeah. Event that I'll be speaking at. I'll be talking about Minecraft. And then I'll also be talking about sustainable development goals at the Nevada Q conference this coming Wednesday. And the reason as to why I like these topics instead of something else is like gender equity is something that is necessary across the board. So like when we're doing things like Minecraft, are we only seeing white males talk about this? When we're doing sustainable development goals, SDG 5 is all about gender equality. And while my talks are not about equality, like let's just get people where they need to be, and then we can get focused on equality.
For anybody who is listening, or especially pre-service teachers, I think especially, what's the difference between equality and equity?
Oh, you want me to say?
Yeah. Do you mind?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No. So equality is treating everybody the same and saying, like you get this many blueberries and you get this many or this many. And then equity is giving people what they need in order to be successful, right? So maybe this student or this person needs like more vitamin D, and like this one needs more vitamin C, right? I realized in saying that vitamins make a little bit more sense than blueberries, but I love blueberries. They're so good. So it's not giving everybody the same. Equality is giving everybody the same thing and just saying, here, you all got all the same thing. There should be no arguments. When actually what it should be is equity, which is examining what the needs are of the different learners and giving them what they need in order to be successful. Success defined as whatever it is in whatever learning scenario.
And I love that. And I think today in this world that we're living in right now, it's so important to understand that we have a capability to get kids where they need to be. And that looks different for everybody. It looks different, especially too for girls. And to be understanding that we have in mind of our own conditioning of what we think girls should be and boys should be. And this is the time to kind of unravel all of that with all the other work that we're doing. And it's like burning down all of the old ideas that have held us back for so long. And just, the beauty from the ashes are coming up, and you are a part of that work, which is amazing. And so just to remind people, so she's going to be in the Microsoft. I think Sarah dropped it in there, and I'll put that back up. But you can see Tara this Sunday at 7 p.m. She's going to be doing. Is this where you're doing your Microsoft session on Minecraft?
Yes.
Is this here? So definitely all you have to do is literally go to this website, q.org/Microsoft, and you'll see the different sessions, and you can choose hers. She's going to be at 7 p.m. Pacific time. All of these times are Pacific. So if you are interested in Minecraft, and again, Minecraft is for boys and girls. My girls love Minecraft too. So wonderful. And this is a 3-part series. So I hope that you will sign up. And also these are recorded, right? So if they can't join live. Okay, wonderful. And then of course you're speaking this a week from today, you're at Q Nevada, so on global, oh my gosh, on SDGs. Can you tell me what an SDG is again? I know I should know.
Yes, it's totally fine. SDGs are Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, with a goal of each goal being met by the year 2030. So we've got about 10 years to save the world.
Wow. And I have a little bit more time to figure out what, to remember what SDG, because it's a huge word. I need to remember that. It's yes. And Rochelle says that she is looking forward to Q Nevada. Great learning opportunity. Thank you all so much for joining today. Tara, this has been such an enlightening talk. And I think that it needs to be talked about a lot more and shared. And I cannot be the only person that is just now finally seeing that I've had my own biases that I've never even thought about. So I hope that other people are noticing that and want to learn more and want to get your book. And I will drop the link to your book in the comments when we're done. So if anybody's interested in getting that, and you can get it on Kindle, you can get it in paperback form. So nobody has an excuse to be ignorant about this anymore. Okay. Are there any last words that you would like to have before we say goodbye?
Just if you've already been doing this work, keep doing it, even though the landscape looks different because it's all virtual. Just be mindful of what you're putting out there and know that people are watching, and they might be little people and they might be big people, but people are watching and they are using what you do and what you say as an example for what is right and what is wrong. So whether it's race, whether it's gender, be mindful of what you are sharing.
And sorry, I froze again, but I totally agree. And I love that you said that. It's a great way to end the show, because we have such a responsibility and as educators and as parents, the opportunity to really create change that is sustainable for the rest of our days here on Earth. So thank you again for joining. I'm going to say one last comment. Oh, look. Thank you, Dr. Sarah, so much for your support. You rock too. And thank you guys. We'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.